You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're mentally exhausted and still expected to function, to answer messages, to make decisions, to show up, to be normal, to act like everything is fine. But everything is not fine. You're running on empty. Your mind is slow. Your thoughts are foggy. Your capacity is gone. And yet, life keeps demanding more. More attention, more energy, more presence, more of you, when there's nothing left to give. This book is not about fixing your life. It's not about optimizing your routine. It's not about becoming more productive. It's about getting you through it. Through the days when functioning feels impossible. Through the moments when you don't know how much longer you can keep going. Through the exhaustion that no one else can see. This book is for the part of you that's barely holding on. The part that wakes up already tired. The part that dreads simple tasks. The part that feels like you're failing at life even though you're doing everything you can. You're not failing, you're exhausted. And mental exhaustion is different from being tired. It's deeper, more persistent, more invisible. And it doesn't respond to the things that usually help. Not sleep, not rest, not even breaks. Because mental exhaustion is not about needing more time off. It's about carrying too much for too long. Without release, without support, without anyone noticing how heavy it's become. Slow pause. So this book won't tell you to try harder. It won't tell you to be grateful. It won't tell you to push through. It will tell you what actually helps. When you're mentally exhausted and still have to function. Not perfectly, not productively, but enough. Enough to get through today. Enough to survive this moment. Enough to keep going. Even when you feel like you can't. Stay here, even if your mind is telling you this won't help. Even if you're too tired to focus. Even if you think nothing will make a difference. Stay. Because you're not alone in this, and there are things you can do. Small things, simple things. Things that don't require energy you don't have. Things that meet you where you are. Right now, in this exhaustion. And help you function, not thrive. Not heal, just function. And sometimes that's enough. Introduction. Why mental exhaustion feels invisible and why that makes it worse. The most dangerous exhaustion is the one no one can see. When you're physically exhausted, people notice. You look tired, you move slowly, you have visible signs. Dark circles, slouched posture, yawning, and people respond. They tell you to rest, to take it easy, to take care of yourself. But mental exhaustion is different. It's invisible. You can look perfectly fine. You can smile. You can show up. You can go through the motions. And no one knows. No one sees that inside. You're empty. That every decision feels overwhelming. That every conversation drains you. That even the simplest tasks feel impossible. You look normal. So people expect normal. They expect you to function, to keep up, to handle things, and you do. Because you have no choice. But inside you're collapsing. This is why mental exhaustion is so dangerous. Not because it's more severe than physical exhaustion, but because it's invisible, and invisibility creates isolation. You can't explain it. You can't point to it. You can't say, look, this is what's wrong. Because there's nothing to show, just this heavy, persistent sense that you can't do this anymore, that you're running on empty, that you're barely holding on. And when you try to explain it, people don't understand. They say you just need to rest, or everyone gets tired, or you'll feel better tomorrow. But you won't, because this is not the same as being tired. This is mental exhaustion, and it's different. Being tired is temporary. You sleep, you recover, you feel better. Mental exhaustion doesn't work that way. You can sleep 8 hours and wake up just as drained. You can take a day off and still feel overwhelmed. You can rest and still have no capacity. Because mental exhaustion is not about lack of sleep. It's about depletion of your mental resources, of your emotional reserves, of your ability to process, decide, engage, care. You've been using those resources for too long, without refilling them, without protecting them, without recognizing that they have limits. And now they're gone, and rest doesn't refill them. Not immediately, not easily, not the way it refills physical energy. Because mental exhaustion is deeper, it's cognitive, emotional, neurological. It's your brain saying, I can't process one more thing. Your nervous system saying, I can't handle one more demand. Your entire being saying, I need to stop. But you can't stop, because life doesn't stop. Responsibilities don't stop. Expectations don't stop. So you keep going, and the exhaustion deepens. And here's what makes it worse: the invisibility. Because when exhaustion is invisible, you start to doubt yourself. You think, maybe I'm just weak. Maybe I'm just lazy. Maybe everyone else handles this fine and I'm the problem. And that doubt adds to the exhaustion, because now you're not just tired. You're tired and ashamed, tired and guilty, tired and confused about why you can't just push through like you used to. But you're not weak, you're not lazy, you're exhausted, and exhaustion has real limits. Limits that don't care about willpower, limits that don't respond to motivation, limits that say you can't push through anymore. Not because you're failing, but because you're human. And humans have capacity limits. And you've reached yours. So this book is not about pushing through. It's not about finding more energy. It's not about becoming more resilient. It's about functioning when you have nothing left. When rest doesn't help yet. When you still have to show up, even though you're empty. It's about the small things, the simple things, the things that make functioning possible. Not easy, not comfortable. Just possible, because right now possible is enough. And these 10 things will help you get there. Not by fixing everything, but by reducing the load. By creating small pockets of relief. By giving you permission to do less. And be okay with it, because you don't have to be okay. You just have to function. And that's what we're going to do, together. One thing at a time. Chapter 1. Stop asking yourself to be okay. The moment you stop demanding strength, your nervous system finally exhales. When you're mentally exhausted, there's a constant pressure. A pressure to be okay, to feel better, to handle things, to not let it show, to keep it together. And that pressure is exhausting, not in an obvious way, but in a constant background way. Like carrying a weight you don't even realize is there, until you put it down. This pressure comes from everywhere, from society, from work, from family, from yourself. The pressure to be positive, to be productive, to be functional, to be normal. And when you're mentally exhausted, you can't meet those expectations. You can't be positive when you're depleted. You can't be productive when you have no capacity. You can't be normal when everything feels overwhelming. But you try anyway, because you think you should. Because you think that's what strong people do. They push through, they stay positive. They don't let exhaustion stop them. But here's the truth. Forcing positivity when you're exhausted makes it worse. Not better, worse. Because forced positivity is denial. It's pretending you're okay when you're not. It's overriding your body's signals. It's telling yourself, I shouldn't feel this way. I should be stronger. I should be handling this better. And every should is pressure. Every should is judgment. Every should is your nervous system trying to perform while depleted. And performance requires energy. Energy you don't have. So you're draining yourself further, just to maintain the appearance of being okay. This is the hidden pressure of I should be fine. It's not just external, it's internal. It's you telling yourself that your exhaustion is not valid, that you should be able to handle this, that other people have it worse, that you're being dramatic, that you just need to try harder. But you don't need to try harder. You need to stop trying so hard. You need to stop demanding that you be okay, and allow yourself to not be okay. Not forever, not as an identity, but for now, right now, in this moment, you're not okay, and that's okay. This is not giving up. This is not weakness. This is honesty, acknowledging what's actually true. I'm exhausted. I don't have capacity right now. I can't be positive when I'm depleted. And that's okay. Not ideal. Not what I want, but okay. Because when you stop demanding that you be okay, something shifts. Your nervous system relaxes, just slightly. Just enough to stop fighting. Stop performing. Stop pretending. And in that release, there's relief, not the relief of feeling better, but the relief of not having to pretend anymore, not having to force it, not having to meet impossible standards while running on empty. You can just be exhausted, struggling, barely holding on, and that's enough, for now. So what do you replace it with? Not with positivity, not with motivation, not with trying harder, but with permission. Permission to be exactly where you are. Permission to not be okay. Permission to function at a lower level. Permission to let go of the pressure. And that permission is not passive. It's active. It's choosing. Choosing to acknowledge your limits. Choosing to honor your exhaustion. Choosing to stop demanding more from yourself than you can give. And when you do that, when you stop asking yourself to be okay, you create space. Space to breathe, space to rest, space to exist without judgment. And from that space, functioning becomes possible, not because you forced it, but because you stopped forcing it. You stopped adding pressure to exhaustion, and you let yourself be. Human, imperfect, exhausted, and still here, still trying, still showing up, even without being okay. And that's enough. Chapter 2. Reduce input before you try to increase energy. Your problem isn't lack of energy, it's too much noise. When you're mentally exhausted, the instinct is to find more energy, to sleep more, to eat better, to exercise, to do things that are supposed to energize you. And those things help, sometimes. But not when you're mentally exhausted, because mental exhaustion is not about lack of energy. It's about overwhelm, too much input, too much stimulation, too much information, too much noise. Your brain is overloaded. Not undernourished, overloaded. And when something is overloaded, adding more doesn't help. even if that more is supposed to be good for you. Pause, think about your day. From the moment you wake up, how much are you taking in? Messages, emails, news, social media, conversations, decisions, tasks, notifications, sounds, screens, thoughts, worries, plans, information. All of it pouring into your mind constantly, without pause, and your brain is trying to process it all, trying to sort it, trying to respond to it, trying to make sense of it, but it can't because there's too much, and it never stops. So your brain is in a constant state of processing, never resting, never pausing, never having a moment of quiet. And that's exhausting, not physically, mentally. Slow pause. This is mental overload. Explained simply. Your brain has a processing capacity, like a computer, and when you exceed that capacity, things slow down, they lag, they freeze, they stop working properly. That's what's happening to you. Your brain is lagging, not because you're broken, but because you're overloaded. And the solution is not more energy. It's less input, less noise, less stimulation, less demand. You need to reduce what's coming in before you try to increase what's going out, because right now you're drowning in input. And adding more even good things like exercise or meditation is just more input, more things to process, more things to do, more demands on a system that's already overwhelmed. Pause. This is why more motivation never works. Because motivation is energy directed toward action, and action requires processing, and processing requires capacity, and you don't have capacity. So motivation just becomes one more thing you're failing at, one more pressure, one more demand, one more input that you can't process. What you need is the opposite, not more. Less to do, less to think about, less to process, less to respond to. You need to quiet the noise. Not all of it, not forever, but enough to create space, enough to let your brain rest, enough to reduce the overload. Slow pause. So what's the first quieting move? It's simple. Stop consuming. For a set period of time, an hour, a morning, a day, whatever you can manage, stop taking in new information. No phone, no news, no social media, no screens, no podcasts, no music with lyrics, no conversations if you can avoid them. Just quiet, just space, just absence of input. And at first, this will feel uncomfortable. Your brain will resist. It will tell you to check something, to look at something, to fill the space. Because it's used to constant input, it's used to noise, it's used to having something to process. But resist. Stay in the quiet. Let your brain have nothing to do, nothing to process, nothing to respond to. And in that nothingness something shifts. The fog starts to clear. The overwhelm starts to ease. The exhaustion starts to lift. Not completely, not immediately, but noticeably. Because you've stopped adding to the overload, you've given your brain a break. A real break, not a different kind of stimulation, but actual quiet, actual rest, actual space. And from that space, you can start to function again, not at full capacity, but at all, because you've reduced the noise. And in reducing the noise, you've created room for thought, for clarity, for the small amount of energy you have left. And that energy can go toward functioning, instead of being consumed by processing endless input. So before you try to increase your energy, reduce your input. Stop consuming. Create quiet. Give your brain space. and let the overload ease. That's the first move. Not the only move, but the first one. The one that makes everything else possible. Chapter 3. Do one thing slower than necessary. Slowness is not weakness, it's regulation. When you're mentally exhausted, everything feels urgent. Every task, every decision, every response, everything needs to be done now. Quickly, efficiently, before you run out of time. Before something else demands your attention. Before you collapse, so you rush. You move fast. You multitask. You try to get through everything as quickly as possible. But rushing doesn't help. It makes it worse. Because rushing is activation. It's your nervous system in high gear. It's speed without pause. It's energy you don't have being burned faster. And when you're already exhausted, rushing depletes you further. Not because you're doing more, but because you're doing it in a state of emergency. And emergency states are unsustainable. This is why rushing keeps you stuck, because rushing feels productive. It feels like you're getting things done, like you're keeping up, like you're handling it. But you're not. You're just moving fast. And fast is not the same as functional. Fast is not the same as sustainable. Fast is your nervous system saying danger. Threat, emergency, keep moving. And that state is exhausting, not just mentally, physically, emotionally. It drains everything, so if you want to function while exhausted, you have to stop rushing. Not entirely, not forever, but in one thing. One action, one task, one moment. Do it slower than necessary. This sounds counterintuitive. When you're overwhelmed, slowing down feels impossible. It feels like you'll fall further behind, like you'll lose control, like everything will pile up. But it won't. Because slowing one action doesn't slow everything, it regulates everything. When you deliberately slow down one thing, you send a signal to your nervous system. That signal is we're not in an emergency. We have time. We can move with intention. We're safe. And your nervous system listens. It starts to ease. The activation starts to lower. The urgency starts to fade. Not completely, but enough to create a pocket of calm in the middle of the chaos. So how do you do this? You choose one action. Something small. Something you do every day. Washing your hands, making coffee, walking to your car, opening a door, anything, and you do it slower. Not dramatically slower, just noticeably slower. Slower than you normally would, slower than feels necessary. And as you do it, you notice. You notice the sensations, the temperature of the water, the smell of the coffee, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the sound of the door opening. You're not rushing. You're not thinking about the next thing. You're just here. In this action, moving slowly, deliberately, with intention, and in that slowness, something shifts. Your breath deepens. Your shoulders drop. Your mind quiets. Just for a moment. Just for this action. But that moment matters. Because that moment is regulation. It's your nervous system coming down from high alert. It's your body remembering that not everything is urgent. That you can move with ease. That you're allowed to take your time. And when you practice this, when you slow one thing every day, it starts to affect everything else. Not because you're slowing everything down, but because you're training your nervous system to regulate, to come down from activation, to find calm in the middle of overwhelm. And over time, that regulation becomes easier, more accessible, more automatic. So you don't have to force calm. You just have to slow one thing and let the calm find you. This is the power of intentional delay, not procrastination, not avoidance, but choosing to move slower on purpose, to regulate your system, to interrupt the rush, to create a moment of ease in the middle of exhaustion. And that moment is not wasted time. It's recovered capacity. It's your nervous system resetting. It's functioning becoming possible again. Not through speed, but through slowness. Deliberate, intentional, regulating. And when you're mentally exhausted and still have to function, regulation is everything, not energy, not motivation. Regulation, the ability to calm your system enough to keep going. And slowness is how you get there, one action at a time. Chapter 4. Lower the bar without feeling like you failed. Lowering the bar is not giving up, it's choosing survival. When you're mentally exhausted, you still have standards. Standards for how you should be functioning, how much you should be doing, how well you should be handling things. And those standards are high because they were set when you had capacity, when you had energy, when you were functioning normally. But you're not functioning normally anymore. You're exhausted, and expecting yourself to meet the same standards while exhausted is impossible. Not because you're weak, but because the standards don't match your current capacity. This is the myth of productivity, that you should be able to do the same amount every day. That consistency means doing everything. That lowering your output means you're failing. But productivity is not a moral virtue. It's output, and output requires input, energy, capacity, resources. And when those things are depleted, output decreases. Not because you're lazy, but because that's how systems work. When you're running on empty, you can't produce the same amount. You can't function at the same level. You can't meet the same standards. And that's okay, not ideal. But okay, because surviving is more important than producing. Functioning is more important than excelling. Getting through the day is more important than getting everything done. So you have to lower the bar, not forever, not as a permanent standard, but for now, while you're exhausted, while you're depleted, while you're barely holding on. You have to redefine what enough means. And this is hard, because lowering the bar feels like failure. It feels like you're giving up, like you're not trying hard enough, like you're letting yourself off the hook. But you're not. You're being realistic. You're acknowledging your limits. You're choosing to function at a sustainable level instead of burning out completely. And that's not failure. That's wisdom. So what does minimum functioning really mean? It means doing only what's absolutely necessary. Not what you want to do. Not what you think you should do. Not what you would do if you had energy. Just what has to be done to keep your life from falling apart. To keep yourself safe. To keep the most important things intact. Everything else can wait. Everything else can be lowered. Everything else is not your responsibility right now. And this might look different than you expect. It might mean not answering every message. It might mean ordering food instead of cooking. It might mean letting the house be messy. It might mean canceling plans. It might mean doing the bare minimum at work. It might mean asking for help. It might mean saying no a lot to things you would normally say yes to, because you don't have the capacity, and pretending you do will only make it worse. So you lower the bar. You redefine enough. You let go of the standards that no longer serve you. and you function at the level you can actually sustain, not the level you wish you could sustain. The level that's real, right now, with the capacity you actually have. And this is how you keep going without collapsing. Not by doing more, but by doing less. Not by pushing harder, but by releasing pressure. Not by maintaining standards, but by lowering them. Temporarily, until you have capacity again. Until you've recovered. Until functioning feels less like drowning. And when you do this, when you lower the bar without guilt, you create space. Space to breathe, space to rest, space to survive, without the constant pressure of not being enough, not doing enough, not meeting standards you can't currently meet. You're just here, doing what you can, with what you have, and that's enough. For now, it has to be. Because you can't give more. And you don't have to. Survival is enough. Functioning is enough. Getting through today is enough. And tomorrow you'll reassess and lower the bar again if you need to. Or raise it slightly if you can. But for now it's lower, and that's okay. That's not failure. That's survival. And survival is what matters most. Chapter 5. Stop explaining yourself even in your head. Exhaustion grows when you keep defending your existence. When you're mentally exhausted, there's a constant internal dialogue, a running explanation, a defense, a justification for why you're tired, why you can't do more, why you need rest, why you're struggling. It happens automatically. You're not even aware of it half the time, but it's there. This constant need to explain to yourself, to imaginary others, to the part of you that's judging. You build a case, you list the reasons, you prove that your exhaustion is valid, that you're not just being lazy, that you have good reasons for feeling this way. And every explanation takes energy. Every defense is effort. Every justification is mental load. This is mental self-justification and burnout, because when you're constantly explaining yourself, you're never at rest. Even when you're resting, your mind is working, building arguments, defending your right to rest, proving that you deserve it. And that work is exhausting, not physically, mentally. It's another task, another demand, another thing your depleted brain has to process. And it never stops, because the judgment never stops. The internal voice that says you should be doing more. You're not trying hard enough. Other people have it worse. You're being dramatic. That voice is always there. And you're always responding to it, always explaining, always defending, always justifying your existence. And it's draining you. This is the cost of inner arguments, not just the energy of thinking, but the energy of fighting. Fighting yourself, fighting the judgment, fighting the belief that you have to earn the right to be tired. And you don't. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to justify exhaustion. You don't have to prove that you deserve to stop. You're allowed. Period. Not because you have good reasons, but because you're human, and humans get exhausted. And when you're exhausted, you need rest. No explanation required. So how do you stop? How do you stop the constant internal justification? You notice it first. You notice when you're building the case, when you're listing the reasons, when you're defending yourself to yourself, and you stop. Not with force, not with judgment. Just, oh, I'm doing it again. And then you release it. You don't finish the argument. You don't complete the defense. You just let it go. I'm tired, that's all. No explanation. No justification, no proof. Just I'm tired. This is learning to exist without permission, without needing to prove that you're allowed to feel what you feel, without needing to justify your limits, without needing anyone, including yourself, to validate your exhaustion. You're exhausted. That's the reality. And reality doesn't need justification. It just is. So you stop explaining. You stop defending. You stop arguing with the part of you that thinks you should be stronger. You just exist. Tired, depleted, barely functioning. And you let that be okay. Not because you've convinced yourself it's okay, but because you stopped trying to convince yourself of anything. You're just here, in this state, without explanation, without defense, without the exhausting work of proving you have a right to be exhausted. And when you do this, when you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim energy. Not a lot, but some. The energy that was going into justification, into defense, into inner arguments. That energy is now available for actual rest, for actual recovery, for actual functioning, because you're not spending it on fighting yourself. You're just being exhausted, human, allowed, without needing permission, without needing proof, without needing to explain. You're just here, and that's enough. Chapter 6: Ground the body before you try to calm the mind. Your mind won't relax until your body feels safe. When you're mentally exhausted, the instinct is to fix it mentally, to think differently, to reframe your thoughts, to talk yourself into feeling better. But mental exhaustion is not just in your mind. It's in your body. Your shoulders are tense. Your jaw is clenched. Your breath is shallow. Your stomach is tight. Your body is holding the exhaustion. And your mind is responding to what your body is telling it. And what your body is telling it is not safe. Overwhelmed, depleted, threatened, so your mind stays activated. It keeps scanning. It keeps worrying. It keeps trying to solve problems. Because that's what minds do when bodies feel unsafe. They try to think their way to safety. But thinking doesn't create safety. Grounding does. Pause. This is why thinking doesn't solve exhaustion. Because exhaustion is not a thought problem. It's a nervous system problem. Your nervous system is depleted, co-activated, stuck in a state of chronic stress. And no amount of positive thinking will change that. You can't think your way into a regulated nervous system. You have to change your body state. You have to ground, to bring yourself into the present moment, to signal safety through physical sensation, not through thoughts, through body. Slow pause. So what does grounding look like? It's simple, physical, immediate. It's feeling your feet on the ground, pressing them down, noticing the contact, the weight, the stability. It's touching something with texture, a wall, a piece of fabric, your own skin, and focusing on the sensation, not on your thoughts, on the physical feeling. It's using temperature, cold water on your hands, on your face, ice held in your palm. The sharp, undeniable sensation of cold, bringing you into now, out of your spinning mind, into your body. It's pressure, hugging yourself, pressing your hands together, squeezing a pillow, feeling contained, held, grounded. Pause. These actions are not distractions. They're signals. Signals to your nervous system. That's I'm here. I'm present. I'm in my body, I'm safe. And when your nervous system receives those signals, it starts to calm. Not immediately, not completely, but noticeably. The activation eases. The tension softens. The overwhelm becomes more bearable. Because your body is telling your mind we're okay. We're here. We're grounded. And your mind starts to believe it. Slow pause. This is simple physical grounding. Not meditation, not deep breathing exercises, not complicated techniques, just physical sensation. Immediate, accessible, available right now. You don't need special tools. You don't need a quiet space. You don't need time. You just need your body and something to touch, or press, or feel. And when you ground yourself physically, you interrupt the mental spiral. You bring yourself out of your head, into your body, into the present moment, where you can actually regulate, where you can actually calm, where functioning becomes possible again. Pause, and this is regaining control without force. Not by forcing calm, not by demanding that you feel better, but by grounding, by giving your nervous system what it actually needs. Safety, presence, physical sensation that says we're here, we're okay, we're grounded, and from that ground, your mind can relax, not because you told it to, but because your body told it it's safe. And your mind listens to your body, always. So ground the body first, before you try to calm the mind, before you try to think differently, before you try to fix your thoughts. Ground, feel, press, notice, and let your nervous system do the rest. Chapter 7. Create one small predictable moment. Stability doesn't come from control. It comes from repetition. When you're mentally exhausted, everything feels unstable, unpredictable, chaotic. Like you don't know what's coming next. Like you can't trust anything to stay the same. Like the ground beneath you is constantly shifting. And that instability is exhausting. Because your nervous system is always on alert. Always scanning, always trying to prepare for whatever comes next. And it never knows what's next. So it never rests. Pause. This is why predictability heals. Not because it's exciting, not because it solves your problems, but because it creates safety. Your nervous system craves predictability. It needs to know what's coming. It needs patterns, rhythms, things it can count on, because predictability signals safety. It says, I know what happens next. I've been here before. I can handle this. And when your nervous system feels safe, it relaxes. It stops scanning. It stops bracing. It allows rest. So when you're mentally exhausted, you need predictability, not in everything, but in one thing, one small, predictable moment. Slow pause. This is one anchor that holds the day together. Not a routine, not a schedule, not a list of things you have to do. Just one moment, one action. One thing that happens the same way every day, at the same time, in the same place, with the same rhythm. It could be your morning coffee, always in the same mug, always at the same time, always sitting in the same spot. It could be a 5-minute walk, always the same route, always at the same time of day, always alone. It could be washing your face before bed, always with the same steps, always with the same water temperature, always with the same towel. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it's predictable, that it's yours, that it happens every day, no matter what else is chaos. Pause. This is safety in the ordinary. Not in grand gestures, not in life-changing events, but in the small repeated actions that tell your nervous system this is familiar, this is safe, this I can count on. And when you have one thing you can count on, the rest of the chaos becomes more bearable. Not because the chaos is less, but because you have an anchor, a point of stability, a moment where you know exactly what happens. And that knowing is soothing. It's grounding. It's a small pocket of control in a world that feels out of control. Slow pause. So you create it. You choose one small moment, and you make it predictable. The same every day, without exception. without variation, just the same. And you protect it. You don't skip it. You don't rush through it. You don't let other things take its place. It's yours, your anchor, your predictable moment. And it holds the day together, not by solving everything, but by being there. Consistent, predictable, safe, and from that one moment stability grows. Not everywhere, not all at once, but enough to function, enough to keep going, enough to survive another day. Because you have something to count on. One small thing that's always the same, and always there. Chapter 8. Stop making big decisions while exhausted. Exhaustion lies to you about your life. When you're mentally exhausted, everything feels wrong. Your job feels impossible. Your relationships feel draining. Your life feels like a mistake. And you think, I need to change everything. I need to quit. I need to leave. I need to start over. And those thoughts feel urgent, true. Like clarity finally breaking through, but they're not. They're exhaustion, exhaustion talking, exhaustion lying, exhaustion convincing you that the problem is your life, when the problem is your state. Pause. This is why everything feels wrong when you're depleted. Because depletion distorts perception. It makes manageable things feel impossible. It makes challenges feel insurmountable. It makes neutral situations feel threatening, and it makes you believe that the only solution is radical change. But radical change requires energy, clarity, capacity, and you don't have any of those things right now. So making big decisions while exhausted is dangerous. Not because the decisions are necessarily wrong, but because you're making them from a distorted state. A state that sees everything as worse than it is, that interprets struggle as evidence of wrongness, that believes exhaustion means something is fundamentally broken. But nothing is broken, you're just tired, and tired minds make terrible decisions. Slow pause. This is the danger of emotional decisions. Decisions made from feeling, not from clarity. Not from logic, not from a regulated state, but from overwhelm, from depletion, from exhaustion that's telling you everything is wrong. And when you make decisions from that state, you often regret them, not immediately, but later when you've recovered, when you have capacity again, when you can see clearly. You realize that wasn't the right call. I wasn't thinking straight. I was just exhausted. But by then the decision is made, and undoing it is harder than not making it in the first place. Pause. So what do you postpone? Everything big, everything permanent, everything that can't easily be undone. Quitting your job, ending a relationship, moving, changing careers, making major financial decisions, cutting people out of your life. All of it, postpone it. Not forever, just until you're not exhausted. Until you have capacity to think clearly. Until your perception is less distorted. Give yourself a time frame: 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever feels reasonable, and commit to not making big decisions until then. Not because you might be wrong, but because you don't know yet. You can't know yet. Not while you're depleted. Slow pause. But what about the things that can't wait? The decisions that have to be made now? Those are different. You make them, but you make them minimally. You don't overthink. You don't overanalyze. You just choose the simplest option, the easiest option, the one that requires the least energy. And you move on, without second guessing, without catastrophizing, without letting exhaustion turn a small decision into an existential crisis. You just decide, and let it be done. Pause. And this is what to postpone and what not to. Postpone the big, the permanent, the life-altering. Don't postpone the small, the daily, the necessary. Make those decisions quickly, simply, without drama, and save your limited capacity for functioning, not for deciding whether your entire life is wrong. Because right now you can't know that. Right now everything feels wrong because you're exhausted. And exhaustion lies. It tells you the problem is external, when the problem is internal. It tells you to change your life, when what you need to change is your state. So don't listen to it. Don't make big decisions. Don't trust the urgency. Just function, just survive. Just get through, and when you've recovered, reassess with clarity, with capacity, with a regulated nervous system. And then, if change is still needed, you'll know. But not now, not while exhausted. Now you just wait. Chapter 9. Let functioning be enough for now. You don't need to heal today. You need to get through today. When you're mentally exhausted, there's pressure to get better, to heal, to recover, to transform, to come out the other side stronger, wiser, changed. And that pressure is exhausting because healing takes energy. And you don't have energy. You're just trying to survive, to function, to make it through another day. And that's enough. Not healing, not transformation, just functioning. Pause. This is the pressure to get better. It comes from everywhere, from self-help culture, from well-meaning people, from yourself. The pressure to turn this into growth, to learn from it, to use it as an opportunity, to become better because of it. But you don't have to. You don't have to grow from exhaustion. You don't have to learn lessons. You don't have to turn suffering into wisdom. You just have to get through it. And getting through it is enough. Slow pause, because healing is not linear. It's not fast. It's not something you can force. And when you're in the middle of exhaustion, healing is not accessible. You're in survival mode. And survival mode doesn't allow for transformation. It allows for one thing: surviving. And that's what you're doing. Day by day, moment by moment. You're surviving, and that's not nothing. That's everything. Pause. So this is permission to stay where you are. Not forever, not as a permanent state. But for now, right now, you're allowed to just be exhausted. You're allowed to just function. You're allowed to not be healing, not be growing, not be getting better. You're allowed to just be here, in this state, without pressure to move beyond it, without judgment for not being further along, without the demand that you turn this into something productive. You're just here, exhausted, functioning barely, and that's okay. Slow pause. This is progress without transformation. Progress is not always upward. Sometimes progress is staying stable. Sometimes progress is not getting worse. Sometimes progress is just showing up, even when you have nothing to give, even when functioning feels impossible, even when you're running on fumes, you still show up. And that's progress, not healing, not growth, but progress. The kind that keeps you alive, that keeps you moving, that keeps you here, even when here is hard. Pause. So let functioning be enough. You don't have to be happy. You don't have to be productive. You don't have to be healed. You just have to function, to get through the day, to do what's necessary, to survive. And when you do that, when you let functioning be enough, you release the pressure to be better, to heal faster, to turn this into something meaningful. And in releasing that pressure, you create space to just be, to just exist, to just survive, without the added weight of expectation. And from that space, functioning becomes easier, not because you're trying harder, but because you're trying less. You're not demanding transformation, you're just allowing survival. And survival is enough, for now, for today, for this moment. Chapter 10. Trust that this is a phase, not who you are. Exhaustion changes how life feels, not what life is. When you're mentally exhausted, it feels permanent. Like this is who you are now. Like you'll always be this tired. Like you'll never have capacity again. And your mind believes it. It looks at the past weeks, months, maybe years, and sees only exhaustion, only struggle, only barely getting by. And it extrapolates. It says this is forever. This is your life now. This is who you've become, but it's not true. Pause. This is why this state feels permanent. Because when you're in it, you can't remember what it was like to not be in it. You can't access the memory of having energy, of having clarity, of functioning easily. It feels like a lifetime ago, like a different person, like something you'll never experience again. But that's not reality. That's exhaustion. Exhaustion narrows your perspective. It makes right now feel like forever. It makes the state feel like identity. But it's not. It's a phase. A temporary state. A period of depletion that will end. Not because you're forcing it to end, but because phases always end. Slow pause, and here's what always shifts first. Not the exhaustion itself, but your relationship to it. You stop fighting it so hard. You stop demanding that it be different. You stop adding resistance to the experience. And in that release, something eases, not the state, but the suffering around the state, the judgment, the fear, the belief that this means something is wrong with you. That eases, and when that eases, the exhaustion becomes more bearable, not because it's less, but because you're not making it worse with resistance. You're just letting it be. And in letting it be, you create space. Space for small shifts, small moments of capacity, small pockets of clarity. They don't last long. They don't fix everything, but they're there. And they're proof that this is not permanent. Proof that change is happening. Proof that you're not stuck forever. Pause. This is hope without false promises. Not you'll be better soon. Not just push through. Not everything happens for a reason. But this is temporary. You won't always feel this way. Phases end. That's it. Not a promise of when. Not a guarantee of how. Just the truth that exhaustion is a state, not a trait, a phase, not an identity. And phases pass. Not because you force them to, but because that's what phases do. They rise. They peak, they fall. And this one will too. Slow pause. So trust that. Even when you can't feel it, even when it seems impossible, even when exhaustion is telling you this is permanent, trust that this is a phase, that it will shift, that you won't always be this tired. Not because you're optimistic, but because it's true. Because exhaustion is not sustainable indefinitely. Because your body will recover. Because your nervous system will regulate. Because phases end, always. And when this one ends, you'll look back and realize you survived, you functioned, you made it through, not perfectly, not easily, but you made it. And that's everything. Pause. So for now, you don't have to believe you'll be better soon. You just have to trust that this is not permanent. That exhaustion changes how life feels, but it doesn't change what life is. And what life is will still be there. When the exhaustion lifts, when capacity returns, when you can see clearly again, it will still be there, waiting. Not perfect, not problem-free, but there. And you'll be able to meet it with energy, with clarity, with capacity, but not today. Today you just function and trust that this is temporary and that you'll make it through, because you always do. Closing. You're still here, and that matters. You kept going all empty. That's not weakness, that's proof. Proof that you're stronger than you think. Not because strength means never struggling, but because strength means continuing anyway, even when you have nothing left, even when functioning feels impossible, even when every day is a battle just to get through. You're still here, still showing up, still trying, and that matters. Slow pause. You didn't do it perfectly. You didn't do it gracefully. You didn't do it the way you wish you could have. But you did it. You function. You survived. You made it through days that felt impossible. And you're still standing, maybe barely, maybe exhausted beyond measure, but standing. And that's everything. Pause, because mental exhaustion is invisible. No one sees how hard you're working just to exist. No one sees the effort it takes to do simple things. No one sees the constant battle to keep going. But you know how hard this has been. You know what it's taken. You know that every day you made it through was a victory, even if it didn't feel like one. Even if you felt like you were failing. You weren't. You were surviving. And survival is not nothing. It's proof. Proof that you can handle more than you thought. Proof that you're resilient. Proof that exhaustion doesn't define you. It's just something you're moving through. Slow pause and you will move through it. Not today, maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, rest will come. Clarity will return. Capacity will rebuild. Not because you forced it, but because that's what happens. After depletion, after exhaustion, after phases of barely holding on, recovery comes, not perfectly, not all at once, but it comes, and when it does, you'll look back and you'll see how far you've come, how much you've survived, how strong you actually are. Pause, but for now, right now, in this moment, functioning is enough. You don't have to be healed. You don't have to be better. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be here. And you are. You're still here. Still breathing, still trying, still showing up, even when it's hard, even when you're empty, even when you don't know how much longer you can keep going. You're here, and that's enough. Slow pause, so give yourself credit for getting through, for functioning while exhausted, for doing what needed to be done, even when you had nothing left. You did it, and you're still doing it, and that matters more than you know. Pause, rest will come, clarity will return, but for now, functioning is enough. You're enough, just as you are. Exhausted, struggling, surviving, you're enough, and you always have been.